I welcome you to a new lesson where we will get acquainted with the concept of matrix in GitHub Actions. To save time, I've already created a separate workflow and wrote a few lines of instructions. So, my instructions are as follows. On Ubuntu, the first step is to check which version of Node.js is installed. Next, using the setup node action, we change the version to WordPress 12 and check the logs again to see if it really has changed to version 12. So it's a simple step. How can a matrix help us? It happens that we need to run a workflow on 3 versions of a node, 12, 14, 18. And to avoid writing the same code 3 times, the first thing that might come to your mind is to just write this job 3 times and change the node version each time. But actually, it's easier to do this with a matrix. You just need to create a special array that contains those version values and pass it here. This way, the necessary number of jobs will run on the required infrastructure. For this, at the job level, we need to add strategies. And in strategies, we write the matrix. In the matrix, we will define this array. Let's call it node version. And I said I want to test on version 12, version 14, and maybe on version 18. Now, instead of hard coding 12 here, I should dynamically pass the value from the matrix. To do this, I write an expression that refers to the matrix context, and I access this key that I created, node version. Now, instead of hard coding 12 here, I need to dynamically pass the value from the matrix. To do this, I write an expression that refers to the matrix context. And I access this key that I created, node version. A simple line saved me x3 space. I would have to write this 3 times, but it should now run 3 workflows simultaneously if we didn't mess anything up. Let's check it out then. Let's commit this and push it to the repository. Here it is, as we can see, 3 jobs. Everyone is working on different versions. So, as you can see, at the beginning, it's approximately 18 by default, and after the change, it's 12. The second job starts with 18, and after the change, it's 14. And this job logically starts with 18. And then also 18, since that's what we set. Now let's improve it even further. Let's say we need to change not just the node versions, but also the virtual machine. We want to run it on both Linux and Windows. So we will also pass the operating system. So I'm creating an array with 2 values for Ubuntu and for Windows. And here in the runs on section, instead of hard coding Ubuntu latest, I'm also passing an expression with the matrix context and referring to OS, the operating system. Now let's think about how many workflows we should have. If we had 3 before, and now we've added 2 more parameters, that means we'll end up with 6. So it will run 3 times on Ubuntu and 3 times on Windows. Let's go to Actions, open the current workflow, and as we can see, we already have 6 parameters. The workflow has started, and we can immediately see Ubuntu 12, Ubuntu 14, Ubuntu 18, Windows 12, Windows 14, and Windows 18. Windows is going to be stuck right now, because I can already see that the variable I passed is written incorrectly, so it just can't complete the job. No worries, we'll just wrap it up here. But it's clear that in this setup we have 6 different workflows starting up. You notice that all 6 workflows were launched simultaneously, that is in parallel. If one of the workflows, and in our case 3, because Windows was incorrectly set for all 3, returns an error, then the entire job will return an error. If we want to return success regardless, even if just one of the jobs fails, we need to add the continue on error parameter. We add it at the job level and set the value to true. So when continue on error is true for me, Even if those 3 on Windows fail, the entire job, the workflow, will return success. And if I basically want to set it to default, I can set it to false is set to true. And there's one more important characteristic here. If one of the jobs fails, then subsequently following job is simply cancelled. To fix this issue effectively, we need to add an additional parameter called fails fast, which should be set at a higher strategy level. You set the value to false, and this will disable it, allowing the subsequent workflows to run even if the previous one returned an error. Also, for the strategy parameter, we can set the number of workflows that can run simultaneously. By default, all 6 started at the same time. If we want to limit this, we pass max parallel and specify how many you want to run at the same time. Let's briefly and clearly specify 2 items. And now, let's once more push the changes back again and head over to the actions. Let's open the current workflow. Let's see, we still have 6 of them, but only 2 are starting because we specified that. Logically, all of them should be successful now since we didn't simulate any errors. But even if just one of the jobs returns an error, the entire workflow will continue to run. So all the instructions have been executed. Sure, we can check. So Windows 18.18, Windows 18.14, Windows 18.12. I won't open Linux anymore. Windows 18.14, 18.18, 19.24, 20.21. Windows 18.12, I won't open Linux anymore. We can add and remove certain combinations. Right now, we have 6 combinations. Yes, we have 2 and 3. So first Ubuntu version 3, then Windows version 3. But let's say we need to remove Ubuntu version 14. And instead add macOS version 17. How do we do that? If we just add macOS with a comma, it will add 3 more jobs, but won't remove Ubuntu. In this case, we need to use additional parameters, include and exclude. We add it right here like this, include. Next, we need a key, and that key is OS, which stands for operating system. I want to add the operating system macOS latest. Also, in this combination, it should have a node version, so I'll add node version 17. And I said I also want to exclude Ubuntu version 14, so I'll write exclude with the key OS. Ubuntu latest. So if I set it up this way, it will look for all matches and it will remove all 3 combinations, meaning all 3 versions of Ubuntu. If I want to remove just a specific version from my list, I need to remember to add the version parameter as well. So I'm passing version 14 to knock version. I'm passing version 14, I'm passing version 14, I'm passing version 14. Let's push and check. Let's go into the action and open our action. And let's see which jobs are running. Ubuntu 12, Ubuntu 18. We no longer have Ubuntu 14. We didn't change anything for Windows. Everything remains the same, but we're adding a new macOS 17 infrastructure. These 2 parameters helped us with that. Now, an important note about these parameters. We can't overwrite certain values. So we can't just take Ubuntu 12 and overwrite it with 17. It won't work like that. We can remove Ubuntu 12 and then add it as a new entry in the system, specifically like this, for example. So it won't overwrite, but we can add additional parameters to the current bundles. For Ubuntu 12, besides these 2 variables for the operating system and version, we can also pass additional parameters while our jobs are finishing. Let's pass an additional parameter right here where we use include for the key. For example, OS. For Ubuntu latest, we're going to introduce a brand new variable, status active, and specifically in this case. For version 3 of Ubuntu, meaning for the 3 workflows, the status will also be passed. So in particular, the third parameter will end up in the array, which will look like Ubuntu latest, 12, active, but with one exception. Since we removed 14, there will only be 2 versions. As a result, it's written down. Let's just push it one more time, a little bit. So macOS latest has the same error again. So it's not finishing, right? I'm not paying attention while typing. Either the letter T on my keyboard is sticking. I'll start it again then. We'll cancel this one. And we'll go into this one. Yes, that letter T is definitely sticking on my keyboard because I see that we're adding a new workflow called Ubuntu latest active. And based on what I commented, it should have been added as the third parameter. The whole problem is that the key here is not fully written. Right, it's that letter T again that's sticking on my keyboard, and it's not the first time it hasn't printed. Let's run it one more time because we see that instead of adding this active as a parameter to this infrastructure and this one, it's being added as a separate item. So we're starting final and we'll disable it too because it will get stuck in a loop. So right now we have Ubuntu 12 and there's another variable in it, but we can't see it anywhere because we're not accessing it. But it's there because it's specifically added to this key. It's also added to this, and all the other workflows basically match what we set up. That's it. The workflow is complete. Everything is done. So let's do the final check. Ubuntu latest. Let's probably go into each one like this. macOS 17 is present because we added it. Windows 18, Windows 14, Windows 12, because we have Windows 3 version of Ubuntu, 18, 15, because we have Ubuntu 12, Ubuntu 18, such as, for example, Indeed, for instance, 4. We're only missing 14 because we're excluding it, and for all the Ubuntus, in our case, there are only 2. We're adding an extra parameter, but it doesn't show up anywhere. We can't see it. That's all for now. See you in the next session.